3, 2, 1. Good morning and welcome to the USA Cares podcast. I'm your host, Matt Castor. I am joined in studio today by Alexis Becker. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning.
Welcome to another wonderful episode.
Yes.
On a rainy Louisville morning.
It's rough.
It is a little rough.
A little wet.
But we're going to make do. Maybe a little raspy this morning, but We'll do our best. It's been fun these last few episodes to bring on some guests with some pretty powerful stories.
Mm-hmm. I've been inspired.
Absolutely.
And impressed.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, not only that people are willing to come on and share some really strong stories, but why they're doing it. So they're doing it to inspire other people. They're doing it to really get people energized. And if you're new to this podcast, that's what we're all about. So we're all about veterans. We're all about reaching out to our veteran community. We're all about encouraging people to really keep going, even though they're maybe going through some rough times. And today is kind of a special episode because it's something a little bit different. And if you know anything about USA Cares in our history, we were started as a result of September 11th and the events of September 11th. And so after September 11th, we go into Afghanistan, we go into Iraq, and all these soldiers are coming back with all these conditions that frankly, they need a lot of help. And USA Cares was formed as a result so that we could really pay attention to the needs of those veterans. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to kind of take a look at where we started and how we started and why we started. I think the why is always so important. And so through a mutual friend, we came across a gentleman named Patrick Troy. And Patrick Troy is in 2001 was the managing director of Cantor Fitzgerald. And for those of you who say, well, that name kind of sounds familiar, why have I heard that before? Well, it's a large company. It's a well-known company based in New York City, and they happen to be housed at the top of the World Trade Center on September 11th. And so I thought is a story that has been told before, but one that needs some attention from USA Cares, because it really does define how we started, why we started, and so I'm excited to have on. So I'd like to welcome onto the podcast Mr. Patrick Troy. Good morning, Patrick.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Matt and Alexis. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your willingness to come on and really speak to all of our subscribers and our listeners and kind of share the story, the powerful story of Cantor Fitzgerald.
Well, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So you are you're in rainy Chicago. We're in rainy Kentucky, but you kind of bounce back and forth between New York and Chicago. Is that right?
Correct. I'm born and raised in New York and moved to Chicago with Cantor Fitzgerald in 1998.
Okay. So which borough do you count as home? Are you a Brooklynite? Are you what are you?
Born in the Bronx, raised in Brooklyn. Parents still live in Brooklyn, and then lived in Manhattan. But I've been here, 23 years already. Time flies.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were with Cantor Fitzgerald 2001, but you started, was it mid 80s, late 80s?
I started in January of 1987.
Okay.
On the 105th floor of the World Trade Center for Cantor Fitzgerald.
Wow. So that's a big level position to start at such a young age.
I started right out of school in an entry level position, and learned the business as time went on.
Okay. So
What brought you to Chicago? Through that position. You just kind of walk us through your.
At the time, I was offered an opportunity. I was a U.S. Treasury government, the government Treasury bond broker, and we were sort of coming out and releasing in the mid '90s electronic trading, and we had a hybrid model with the brokers, and I call myself a little more of the guinea pig, where if we can take one of the 300 brokers and relocate them, never mind outside the building, but into another state, and he can conduct his business on a daily basis and produce revenue, and the customers are happy, then it would be a success. So I volunteered for the position to move to Chicago because most of my clients and friends were in Chicago that I did business with. So it was an easy transition business-wise for me with my relationships in Chicago. So I moved February 13th, 1998 to Chicago, and it was a 2-year trial experiment, but you know how life goes.
Yeah.
I never left. Chicago is a great city, and it's very easy, and I can live in the city with my family, and I have 3 kids, and yeah, I just didn't have a need to move back to New York.
So take us back for a minute to this day. So take us back to 2001, one of the worst days in American history, September 11th. Where are you? What are you doing? What's happening with you?
Morning of September 11th, I was, I was at home getting ready to go to work. I usually get to work about 8:30 in those days. Since I'm in electronic trading, more the business is conducted or the client visits are having, when the market closes towards the end of the day. So I used to get to work about 8:30. So I was in my apartment getting ready, and then my wife notified me that something happened at the World Trade Center, and a plane hit the building. And my immediate thought was, spending 11 years at the World Trade Center, I've witnessed a lot of planes sort of coming very close to the building. Like I felt like they used to buzz the tower. And
Like full-size planes or small, like private planes?
smaller planes, helicopters, news
Yeah.
helicopters, like they would fly by all day long.
Right.
So it was not shocking to me to look out my window and see a small plane or a helicopter, or around the World Trade Center. So when I heard that immediately, I was like, oh, a small plane, lost control and hit the building. And then I went to the TV to see, where it hit, and it was sort of on the upper floors, and I immediately just left and went to the office. And I got to the office, and it was only like 10 minutes for me to get to work, and it was just that was the moment where it was just complete chaos.
Yeah.
Our phones, our connections to the offices, the callings. I was receiving a lot of incoming phone calls from family members. Um, yeah, it was a traumatic, more of a panic of
Yeah.
what's to do next and where do you reach out, because you got to remember my entire connection to the company in New York City was all in the World Trade Center.
So-
We had no other offices.
Yeah, talk about that, because that was the single location for Cantor Fitzgerald at the time. That was the world headquarters, right?
Correct. So we had 960 employees
Wow.
at the time, and 658 died that day.
Oh my
And
goodness.
we had office space on the 86th floor, and we had office space on 102, 103, 104, and 105. 106 and 107 was windows of the World Restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So we were at the very top of office space in that building.
Which tower were you?
Tower 1.
Okay. Is that the North Tower or South Tower?
That would be the North Tower, the one with
North
the
Tower.
antenna.
Okay.
The antenna on
Gotcha.
top.
Gotcha.
The observation deck is number 2.
So are you reaching out to people at this point? Are you calling people? Like, what are you doing? I imagine that's a bit of a helpless feeling. So I don't know what you do in that moment.
It's hard to recall.
Yeah.
I was, you're dialing, and we
Yeah.
had these telephone systems on a turret where you'll click, open squawk box to the other side,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to call people like without dialing a number.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I was not able to get through. We had other divisions that did have connections that were already in the office that had squawk boxes to New
Mm-hmm.
York, and we were just, you know, panicking together,
Yeah.
and saying, what do we do? And yeah, that was, there's no set plan at that stage today, but where to go. I mean, today we have a plan,
Yeah.
a business continuing plan where this is where you call. But at that moment, it was just, figure it out.
Wow.
And it was interesting that a lot of the wives somehow found they knew me from their
Mm-hmm.
husbands because I worked there already 11 years with a lot of these guys before I went to Chicago. So they reached out to me for assistance, and I didn't have any answers at the moment,
Yeah.
but I felt responsible to answer the phone and speak to the wives as they were panicking on the other end.
Sure.
And I think they were just happy to get in touch with someone. It wasn't like I had any news to give them,
Yeah.
no way to ease their pain. But as anyone knows, if calling someone and not getting through is extremely frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not speaking to a person at the other end of a phone, no matter what it is. And
Yeah.
so I was happy to be there to be able to just speak to some of the wives and as soon as I know something, I'll let you know. Um,
And
and
these were
that's all
young.
I could do.
These were largely young people, right? These were largely young employees. Is that
Correct.
correct?
So I was, I forget my age now at the time. I moved to, I was 30, I think I was 34 at the time.
Okay.
And I moved to Chicago a couple of years before that. And majority of the employees, I don't want to say speak for everyone, but the people that were the brokers, we were
Mm-hmm.
all in our 30s. We were all in our
Wow.
30s. There was some 40s and 20s. Cantor Fitzgerald was a company that basically took someone young and you just grew into the business.
Mm-hmm.
And because our when I started in the treasury room in 1989, there was I want to say there was like 80 of us. And then as we grew to 300, and remember, this is just one department of many. There was about 300 voice brokers. They had to hire people and bring people in, and they always brought people in from right out of college,
Yeah.
or younger people that you know had some type of relationship with the firm or people that worked there. Um, as it's been mentioned before, we had a lot of relatives. We had no problem hiring someone's brother or sister.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had some people's children working there that passed away, and we had some people's son-in-laws that passed away. So it was not a company where we don't hire relatives. We were like, sure, if they're anything
Yeah.
like you, we'll be happy to have you. And
Which
you'd
makes
have
this even harder, right? Which makes this whole thing even harder because you're not just losing people that you hired off the street. You're losing friends and family.
Correct, correct. It
Yeah.
was definitely a lot of people that everyone eventually knew each other. And one of the things about Cantor Fitzgerald that's different than everyone else, people get jobs and they work there, and they're easy. You see people go from job to job. One thing about Cantor was you worked 12-hour days, and then you
Yeah.
continued it with client entertainment and business. So you'd get there at 7:30 in the morning, and you'd be with these individuals to 10, 11 o'clock at night,
Wow.
maybe that late on like 3 night week. But at least from 7 to 6, you were in the office with them, and that's more. People don't realize that's more time than you spend with your family and your
Yeah.
loved ones and friends that are outside, good friends that you live in the city with, your roommate. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a roommate, you only see a roommate when you go to bed and get
Right.
up, but you're spending the majority of your 20s and 30s with these people. And I think that's what made Cantor Fitzgerald so special was it was the bond. It was the bond of being, you know, in the trading pits, in the trenches as they call them, with these people. And you knew everything about the guy to the right of
Mm.
you, to the left of you. We like I would touch elbows with these people, and to the right of me and to the left of me. And if they were making a personal phone call with whoever, it could be a loved one, it could be getting in a fight with a loved one, it could be anything. You knew about it. You knew every detail of that argument because they had nowhere to go. There wasn't a
Yeah.
quiet room where you can take your phone. So all your laundry was out in the open, good,
Yeah.
bad, birthdays. Celebrations on the weekends, planning for this, planning for that. You knew everything about your colleague, and
That's
that's what took the bond, made it so tight.
Mm.
Because you go to college with some people, or you grow up with some people. I mean, that's probably not good examples, but you you don't learn as much as you did in the trading floor, being living and breathing next to these people so long for so many
Yeah.
hours a day, every single day, and that's why it made it so special. I mean, we had a lot in the company. People married within the company. which is amazing. There was a lot of marriages in the company because when you're working that closely together with someone, and there's someone, you're seeing 50 feet away that's working the same hours shifts you are, sometimes there's a connection.
Yeah.
And that was
And there's no
very,
time to
very
date,
common.
right? There's no time to date, so that's who you spend your time with.
No, there's not. It depends on the situation. They invite you to their client dinner, you invite them to their client
Yeah.
dinner. So it was a continuation of work.
Yeah.
And one thing leads to the other. And there's some people, a lot of the widows or widowers are, they used to work at the company.
I think a lot
So it
can be
makes,
said of that bond is, could be a parallel could be drawn to the military. I mean, you're spending a million hours together in very close quarters, and that bond is, unbreakable. Really.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It is a lot. I mean, a lot of people start off in the military young, and they're learning life at that moment with the people around them all doing the exact same thing at the exact same moment. So that's just like we're in our 20s. We know nothing. We're just learning. We're just trying to figure this out, this job out, figure out the world, figure out, New York City. And the same thing I would assume, Alexa, what you said is, with the military, like, you're like, what do I do today? And
Yeah.
you do what the
Yeah.
guy to the left of you is doing. You do what the guy to the right is doing, and that's it. You're in it together. And we were
Yeah.
all every morning we went to work. We were in it together till we went home that evening. And I could definitely see the similarities to that. I mean, obviously two extremes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all of the servicemen and what they do for our country. So I won't compare it in any extreme except for the brotherhood
Right.
that we all shared. So that
Were there anybody? I want to be sensitive when I ask questions, so forgive me if I ask something that's inappropriate. Were there any people that made it out that day?
no.
Okay.
It's when you say made it out. Once the plane hit, no one made it out.
Okay.
There are a couple of individuals that let's call it luck.
Yeah. Timing.
Now,
Yeah.
some people late for work because it was a big Michael Jackson concert the night before, and people just came to work late. They decided to go to late. So luck.
Yeah.
You know, one individual that I worked with. He he had a client call him and was very upset. Was across the street. I won't name the person or the firm, but it was a very large institution. And the guy goes, "Get over here now," right? And he was angry. And we did a lot of customer visits in person, and he goes, "I'll be right over," and he left. And he was on the trading floor and looked at the TV when it hit. I still speak to this individual every day, not every day, but often, and we worked together after that. Another heartbreaking is another individual had a visitor show up, and the visitor forgot the security desk down. So you had to take two elevators. You had the security desk on the first floor, and then you had to take an elevator to the 78th floor. And then I call it the cattle car because it was just fit like 30 people. And then you take the local trains, to the 86th floor or you took the different elevator banks. So
Yeah.
we had multiple options. It was for speed. And the security desk calls up this individual and says, "Hi, we have your guest here," to say Joe Smith, and he left his wallet in his hotel room. He was in from out of town. He says, someone's going to have to come down and get him. And his assistant at the time was 8 months pregnant. And he looked at her and said, "Don't worry, I'll go down. I got this," because normally you would send your assistant down to get a visitor to sign him in. And he went down that day and checked in the guest. And when he was at the security desk, showing his ID badge, is when the planes hit.
Wow.
So him doing a good deed, saved his life. But in thinking about it is, if she went down, she had a newborn baby that passed away.
Yeah.
That was 8 months pregnant. So it's like there is no winners in that scenario. We lost two lives, and it's just luck. It's just all I can say, luck. So, and then there's a couple other individuals that were trying to get in the elevator. That when the planes hit, the fuel from the airplane came down the elevator shafts
Right.
and burned this friend of mine. Very, you know, I don't want to mention names if I'm not
That's okay.
supposed
Yeah.
to. So
Yeah.
she she's been on TV, she's been on Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
and she burned like 90% of her body.
Oh.
And she's around today and has a beautiful family and is so sweet and does a lot of speaking engagements,
Mm-hmm.
motivational, because she overcame that. She was in a coma, I believe, for 3 months, induced
Wow.
coma because of all the burns. And so those are examples of some of the survivors that
Yeah.
I'm aware of. Um, yeah,
You
it's
know,
it's
one of the most iconic moments I think for me from that day, and I remember where I, like everybody else, I remember where I was and what I was doing, and I remember looking at the TV and seeing your CEO on TV and seeing him. And the best way I can describe it, it was just in those moments, it's just as real as you can be, and just being as honest and as heartfelt and as just heart cry, and the pain that we saw in his face that day. It was just one of those moments that stuck with me. And describing, he's like, I got 700 people in there, and so that was something that always jumped out at me. I mean, September 12th, what do you do?
well, Howard Lutnick is the chairman and CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, BGC Partners, all our
Mm,
affiliates, and he was taking his son Kyle to the first day of kindergarten. Now,
mm,
just to, I I'm probably not alone in this, but I think a lot of us started doing that. We made sure it was a guarantee that our children, we would take them the first day of school, and I
yeah,
kept that going because it worked for him. So it just, I took that idea. I mean, I think I would have done it anyway, but I made sure that I've attended my first day of school for all my children into high school,
sure.
really because of that. But when Howard, came down to, found out and came down to the World Trade Center when the school notified him when he was there, and he came down, he was just like I was in Chicago. We were sort of helpless. Like
Yeah,
there wasn't someone you run to because no one knew what was going on. It was just
yeah.
uncertainty and looking for answers. And Howard Lutnick's brother Gary Lutnick
Mm-hmm.
was my best friend.
Oh,
So
I'm
he was
sorry.
my met him. I met him at work through my mutual friend, our mutual friend Kent Carrison. When he started work, my friend Kent said, "Hey Pat, Howard's brother's starting at the firm this week. He doesn't know anyone here. Let's take him out for a beer." And I
Mm-hmm.
met him on that Thursday, and we hit it off and became good buds after that. And he was going to be the best man at my wedding, and I got
Mm.
married 2 months later.
Wow.
I can mention that later. I got married in November 23rd of 2001. And that's a segue. Howard called me up after 9/11, like later that week, and was like, you're getting married in a few months, right? And I'm like, I don't know. And honestly, I couldn't fathom getting married after going through what we went through.
Yeah,
And he goes, you need to continue, and you need to move on, and getting married is a good thing.
yeah.
So, why would you not do a good thing? And so you get married, and I'll be there. And he flew in and attended my wedding. That was 2 months later.
Wow.
So I was grateful for that because I needed the support, um, you know, at that
Well,
moment.
and it's so true, and I think that's a good example of, at some point, I imagine the tendency is to want to just not do anything, and after that, but you've got to, right? You got to get back to life. You've got to get back to, and at least at that point, that gave you some happy back in your life and something to look forward to and something to enjoy. So, um,
So yeah,
mm,
so on September 12th, there was a lot of phone calls that evening, a lot of things going on. And my immediate response was like, I'm coming to New York.
yeah,
I'm, and Howard's like, get the business up and running in Chicago. And as soon as you have it up running, then, cover your territory, get it up and running since it was electronic trading, then you can come to New York and help out in New York. And I was like, done. And so I was motivated as fast as I possibly can to get the business up and running, which I did accomplish in 2 days. So by
wow,
Thursday evening, I had everybody in Chicago up and running, trading electronically. And again, my motivation was like, yeah, I could sit and do nothing. I can take my time getting up and running, but I didn't have fear. I basically had, motivation that I need to get to my friends. I need to get to
Yeah.
where they are. And they're in New York City, they're not in Chicago. And
Mm.
so there was no flights at the time, and I packed up a car I overpacked. I found some hotel room, which at the Sheraton Hotel, and I think I lived there for a few months. But my wife
Mm.
and I went there. My fiance at the time went there in Friday, that Friday after September 11th, and I went to New York for a couple of months to just to be there.
Yeah. Wow. So so you get the business going in Chicago, and I imagine that at this point the company's thinking we've got to diversify around the country. We've got to spread out a little more. We've got to what happens then? So you go into rebuilding mode, correct?
I mean, right in the beginning, we had to figure out where we were going to work.
Yeah.
We had no office spaces, so we had some office spaces donated to us, that clients weren't using
Mm-hmm.
because of the, you know, little less than 300 employees had to go to work. And then we had people calling us volunteering to come back to work. And we had, people that got laid off the day before that called up and said, "I will come back." You know,
Wow.
it was an interesting thing to get layoffs on a Monday, but we did. And a couple of those individuals are like, "I know I got laid off, but can I come back? I need to come back to work. I need to come back and
Yeah.
help. I need to be with you." And that was the whole thing about it wasn't work, right? It wasn't going to
Yeah.
do your job. Yes, you're doing your job and you're working as hard as you possibly can, but you're more focused on being with your colleagues. And I
More like
and
a
I think
lifestyle.
well, there was no lifestyle at that moment. It was more, you know, it was we had the office space. We had to figure out how to get the business up and running, what our next steps were.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that was, we were attending funerals already in a couple of weeks. Some people had burials earlier, and we used to remember, we all grew up in the 20s and 30s. So when somebody say how many people that you knew that passed out of 658, I can honestly say, it could be anywhere between 2 to 300. I mean, these
Wow.
people interacted in my life in the hallways, cafeteria, in the restaurants, the bars, the gym. We all were within a close,
Yeah.
proximity of ourselves. And we're all young, so it's like going to school. You know everybody, and you're
Right.
learning together. So the hard thing that we had was trying to figure out whose funeral to go to, because as anyone who knows New York City,
Mm.
not many people live in New York City. People live in New Jersey, people live in Staten Island, people live in Brooklyn, Long Island, Westchester, and these are our commutes outside the city. And we wanted to support all our friends. And I think one of the hardest things was listing the funerals of the day on the whiteboard and then for the week, and trying to figure out who, part of our that we wanted to represent was we wanted one of us to attend every funeral.
Yeah.
You couldn't be in Jersey in a morning funeral and in Long Island in the afternoon. It was just physically impossible. So we wanted to make sure, we represented ourselves, and we were there, as a friend, a colleague and a
Yeah.
friend, and where the family knew us. And I think people appreciated that. We appreciated just being able to be there. We didn't do anything. We just needed to be there and say we're sorry, and how what a great guy or girl the individual was.
Wow.
Sometimes that just being that presence is all somebody needs. Just knowing that you're there will help them get through that time.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think that, you know, how do you get through these things? How do you move on? And it really, really comes down to, um, the brotherhood, the fellowship, being colleagues. Like, I can go to work after September 11th and look at all my colleagues that are there with me that didn't pass away, and they knew what I was thinking. They knew what I was feeling, right? As much as, I love my wife and I love my friends and my family, and they're saying they're sorry and trying to comfort me, you know, I needed the survivors. I needed the survivors that were just like me that understood because only they get it. You
Yeah.
know, and I'm not, again, nothing wrong with my family members or anybody trying to support me or people saying they're sorry or this or that. It was more I need that connection, and there was nothing that can come out of your mouth to one of them that would be wrong. You could tell a joke about
Mm-hmm.
someone that just passed away. You could tell a great story. You could say, you remember this, you remember that. No matter what the story was, you know, we got it. We understood it. We lived it. We get it. And and half of that you can't say with words. You know,
Yeah.
so as like I said, being present with our colleagues and our friends, that's huge. To this day, 20 years later, you know, I call them. I'm still in touch with a lot of the survivors because that's what I need. No one, they just don't. It's rude to say they don't get it, but they
Mm-hmm.
just don't understand it
No,
as
that's right.
well as the people that went through it, the people that actually survived. And literally, yeah, you know, this a few times a month, I'm still speaking those, even if they don't work at Cantor Fitzgerald, and they work at other companies and they've moved on to different parts of their life, I stay in touch
Yeah.
because it's never, no one can relate to my pain, my hurt, you know, unless someone else who can share the same pain and hurt and understanding that we go through. Um, and it's amazing to have. And picking up that phone and calling someone like that is some days what you need. And I think that's
Yeah.
what got me through it. It was those individuals, those colleagues, those people I could relate with. Um, those are the people that got me through the last 20 years.
So
You know?
this that's really interesting to me because we have veterans come on this podcast often and share their stories from Iraq or Afghanistan and some of the difficulties they've come through. And right now we've got a veteran suicide rate that's approaching 26 veterans a day. And part of the reason is the isolation. Part of the reason is them being alone. And I think anytime somebody goes through a traumatic experience with other people, they've got to be able to have that outlet. They've got to be able to talk to people. They've got to be able to relate to people. And what you're describing, I think, fits in with with a lot of these veterans as well. And just be willing to find those people who have been through it too, and talk about it, and keep talking about it and keep getting it out. But I think the fear is when we isolate and we don't discuss it. And I love to hear that you've got that community, and there's that community of survivors from September 11th that still do that.
Yeah, because they, you know, they're in the same position I am. I mean, I heard in a newscast talk about survivor's guilt. You know, like
Yeah.
it's, you know, I think that it's something that's true. You know, we are all, you know, trying to figure out what our role is. Why are we here? Why did we
Mm-hmm.
survive? Why did this happen? You know, and it is really about moving forward, staying on, you know, on path. You know, you want to say God's path, just stay on
Mm-hmm.
the path and try not to deviate off of it. And you know, by waking up in the morning, doing the best thing you can do for others, helping other people helps keep you centered. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's important. I'll keep a list of names from September 11th, and you know, I'll have that urge one day, and I'll just go down the list. And I think it's important, you know, for maybe for veterans or other people that are in this situation, to create a list. Create a list of people that that you feel that looks like that gets you. You know, not someone you could pick up the phone and call someone and say hi. And you don't got to say another word because
Yeah.
you know that person on the other firm understands where you're coming from and probably understands what you're going through at that moment. And so I think it's important keep that lame and just start at one and go to 10, and just
Hmm.
if there's three, just keep calling back, because if those individuals see that you're calling them, they sort of know why.
Yeah.
And they will call back, and they will call back. And I think the heaviest thing in the world, they say, is a phone.
Hmm.
The phone is the hardest thing to pick up. It weighs 1,000 pounds at some days, and
Yeah.
and no one does it. So I think it's important, it's important to reach out and just be like, hey, today stinks,
Yeah.
right? That's all you got to say. Today stinks, and then wherever the conversation goes after that, it goes. But I think getting it out to someone that is like you, that understands you from a living experience, not from a loving experience, but someone who's lived what you've gone through, just saying that out loud, it helps you. I think it just helps you get through the day,
Yeah.
because tomorrow's another day. All I'm trying to do is get through today,
Yeah.
and I think that's important.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think that's so true, and I think that's been something that's been really therapeutic for a lot of people, going through September 11th, going through different situations. So I appreciate you saying that. So fast forward a little bit to this recent September 11th. So I believe you were in New York City for the ceremonies on this year. What was it like, 20th anniversary, being there?
20th anniversary. Yes, I took a seven. I had a wedding the night before, and I took a 7 a.m. flight to New York. I landed at JFK. I had my brother pick me up, and the first thing I wanted to do was go to my parents. So my
Mm-hmm.
parents still live in Brooklyn, New York. So I went to see them, and put on a suit, and then he took me to the site, and we host a luncheon. This year was fantastic. It was at the World Financial Center. It was a luncheon of all the family members that came to support their loved ones at Cantor Fitzgerald, because we have a private memorial. They do the reading of the names with the city in the morning, but we do our own thing just to keep the bond tight,
Yeah.
keep us together, um, because everyone loves working at our firm. And when you come home and you see your child, or husband or wife, coming home and happy with their job, and loving the people they work with, and probably know a few of them from weddings, and um, the family members that would show up knew that. They could feel that, and
Yeah.
they just wanted to be at the place, be with the people. Again, back to the people, be with the people that made them happy. And so we probably had, 400 family members, and they had a luncheon. And this children, remember, the children now are, you add 20 years to when they were born,
Yeah.
and two and three, they're 22, 23, and they were in attendance. So we had that luncheon, and then we had the memorial itself, and then we do the reading of the names also.
Do you look forward to that, or do you dread that day?
It's one of those days for me personally. I can only speak about myself. Is
Mm-hmm.
I'm just there. I'm just there.
Yeah.
And I no, I don't. I don't look forward to it. I'm there for support of the family members,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm there, and I'm. It's just a day of immersing into that day. You're walking the museum, you're reading the names, you're making memories, it's a lot. It's a lot of
Yeah, I'm
information
sure.
cramped up into one day. So I'm lucky enough when I go to New York, I'll walk the museum and the fountains. But again, what my saving grace is, the people I want to speak to that would be on 9/11, they're on my phone. I speak to them often during the course of the year, because I reach out and they reach out to me, and so we keep that connection. So the one day doesn't define us. It's basically the continuous bond that we have with them. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things after these were all over, I just happened to be walking around, and I stuck around walking around, and there was at 7 p.m. the fire department host their memorial, and it was the fire department in New York City department, the NYPD, Port Authority, and they had some military invite speakers. I forget what service it was, but it was more like the Green Beret, or
Mm-hmm.
and they invited them to attend their memorial, and it was at 7 p.m. and it was started by the I think it's the Emerald Society, the Bagpipers, and they started doing this after September 11th, and there was probably 5 to 10,000 people there. It was just 7 o'clock at night. It was
Wow.
dark. This is dark. The whole, in everybody's opinion, the day was over at 9/11, right? At the site, the TV crews left. Everybody was gone, and then that's when the fire department has theirs for the
Wow.
for the for the servicemen. And what I take away from that was how grateful they are for their brothers that
Yeah.
passed away, and the brotherhood. And it was 5 to 10,000 fire flags, bagpipes going, speeches, rah rah rah. 20 years later. And that's what I left, and I was just so impressed with the brotherhood, of how they all come together. They support each other when they support the families of each other. That to me, I left listening to them and being attending that touched me, and I
Yeah.
left. And again, it comes down to Cantor Fitzgerald, the brotherhood, of why we were all so close. We were young and growing and learning together. The military, the same thing with the whole brotherhood. Like we are one. And the fire department are no different, and the police department are no different. There's a lot of professions out there that are no different than from a Cantor Fitzgerald to anything else. That there is a brotherhood. If you're in the right firm, working in the right place, you can't make this brotherhood. It has to naturally start and grow. And
Yeah.
anyway, for 9/11, that was how my night ended before I went
Hmm.
back. I went to my parents, and that definitely touched me. Ended my day that way.
You talked about, people coming together, and Cantor Fitzgerald hosts a charity day. When did they start that? I know we talked about it. It was supposed to be on the 10th. How did that go this year? And did you get to?
They have it on September 11th, and as I mentioned, the day 9/11 is overwhelming.
Hmm.
It's you sort of don't know where you belong,
Right.
right? And since it lands most of the time Monday through Friday, Howard Lutnick came up with, and Allison Lutnick and Edie Lutnick, they started this, the Cancer Relief Fund, and they wanted to find ways to give back and and they came up with ways to give health insurance for 10 years, and they gave $180 million to the families to support them, and try to figure out how do we resolve this? How do we support our people that passed, the 658 families? I mean, these people have wives and children, or husbands and children. Like, we need to be there. And so they started the Cantor Fitzgerald Relief Fund a few days afterwards. Um, and so one of the things they do is, we reach out to our clients, and we're like, we're going to donate all the revenue we make for that individual day, and we're going to put it in the Cantor Relief Fund, so in turn we can get it to the families.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that was started exactly in, you remember, there's only a few months left in 2001, but it was definitely in 2002. Um, so I would assume it started in September 11th of 2002, is when it began. And down to the point was, not knowing what to do. Well, this gave us a purpose. You woke up on September 11th, right? And you're thinking about your friends. It's not a great day. You're
Yeah.
not waking up happy, but
Right.
you
Yeah.
wake up to the point where about giving back. Well, we're going to give back, and we're going to help the families of our loved ones and our lost ones and our colleagues. And we're going to go to work and work as hard as we can and raise as much money through work that we
Yeah.
possibly can, in turn, to get that money to the families. So that flies by. The whole day is, from 7 a.m. to, 6 p.m. and you're working. So you don't have as much time to focus on the 9/11. Again, it's about getting through the day. Whatever works for you. Whatever works to
Yeah.
get through the day into tomorrow. And this kept us busy. And
Hmm.
we were busy for good reasons. And I think the last few years, it's averaged around $12 million we make in that day
Wow.
of charity. So, and I don't have the final number, but I believe it was mentioned it was around $12 million again this year. So,
That's amazing.
yeah, so that's what we do on September 11th. We work as hard as we can. We try to find great ways to create revenue at our employment, so we can give it back and help others. And and then that evening we usually have our private memorial for Cantor Fitzgerald.
Well, and those are the things that I think that are so important for people to hear. We focus so much on the day, on the tragedy, but I would love to, and I love this conversation because, today we're able to focus more on the recovery, on taking care of the survivors, on taking care of the families, and loving those people and celebrating the memory of the ones we lost. But there is victory that comes out of the tragedy with a lot of these people, and I imagine the work that they can do with this relief fund is just healing in a lot of ways.
It addressed an immediate concern for the families, like with the health insurance. You have
Mm-hmm.
children. They have to go to see the doctor. They have to do this. So by covering those and making sure like your medical expenses are paid for from a health insurance point of view, like they they tried to see what the need was, what a family needs uh, to raise their kids, and health insurance is so important. So trying to fix what is so they can continue and have less stress. That was done by Edie Lutnick and Allison and Howard to figure out, what each family did. I know
Yeah.
Edie spoke with every one of 658 families and worked with a lot of
Wow.
them and created this bond. So, the families would reach out to Edie, and, that was their lifeline to their loved one. Like, because, you say, who do you call? Who do you
Yeah.
reach out to? So now we're all back at work working over this many years, and these parents are still wanted that connection, right? And unless they're friends with someone that survived, they had the Cancer Relief Fund, and they could reach out to Edie Lutnick and talk to her, and they could, that was their phone call, that was their pick up the phone and call, because Edie lost her brother,
Mm.
right? Who was Gary Lutnick, who was my best friend, and Edie and I created a strong bond after September 11th, and I love her to death, and she's been there to support me, and it's again, it's having someone to reach out for, no matter what your position is, but being able to pick up the phone, and for a family member, a mother or father who lost their child at 32 years old, to call Edie and just have a conversation, for Edie to understand, because she, not that she just also lost she's running the charity, but she's also lost her brother,
Yeah.
and she knows what it feels like. So she gets it, and she
Yeah.
can relate. And so she's been instrumental for all the 658 families over the last 20 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, as we wrap up, first of all, thank you for being a part of this. This was great, and I think it selfishly for from a USA Cares standpoint, it helps give a little bit of perspective to the people who support us as to why we started, why we do what we do, and is to offer support and to offer help to those who are coming back from some very difficult situations. If somebody who's heard this story today, heard about the Cancer Relief Fund, and they want to contribute to it, they want to help with it, how can they do that?
I believe correct me if I'm wrong, just
That's
Google
okay.
cancerrelieffund.org,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe.
Okay.
And the person who runs that is Edie Lutnick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a small operation, but they get the job done. And now they actually contribute a lot of funds in to help others,
That's
not just the
fantastic.
family members. So it has moved on to a lot of different disaster situations where they step in to help families,
That's wonderful.
just like they've done for the Cantor Fitzgerald families.
So if you're listening today, check it out, Cancer Relief Fund. Look for ways that you can help, and it sounds like they're doing a lot of great work. So, but we want to thank you for being on here today, sharing a story that's not easy to share. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if some people listening took some comfort from some of the things you said, and we thank you for being so open today.
Matt, Alexis, thank you for having me. I mean, this is, in 20 years, I have never done an interview. This is my
Really?
first and only, yes, this is my
Wow.
first, right now, it's my first and only one that
Heard
I've
it
ever
here
done.
first.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Is it hard?
I, it's I was nervous about it.
Okay.
Nervous about being on, what to say, what to say, making sure my point, the people we've lost got through correctly. So
Yeah,
it felt a little pressure, but I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I can, help in any way. If I can help one individual, then
that's
this was
it.
all worth my time. Because I know, USA Cares does a great job, and is reaching out people. Started something from 20 years ago, but as we all know, it doesn't end timeline of when a veteran or a person needs support and needs
Yeah.
help. Things sometimes take time, to heal, but
Hmm.
also how much we block out the hurt, and we don't let the hurt affect us, and we have a mask, and we don't let it out.
Yeah.
And that could be 20 years. People could be, the 9/11 thing could be hitting people today. You'd be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, we're not ones to judge. We're not ones to judge others on how their mind works and how, their mental health is. So,
Yeah.
so we have to make sure, like you both are, that you're there. And you're there 20 years later, and hopefully you're still there 20 more years after this.
Absolutely.
And that's the deal, is because you just don't know. And as Alexa said earlier, it's about being there, being available. And as long as you're available for others, then you've done your job. And that's the whole point. Be there from others. The more you're there for others, the less you can think about yourself, as they say.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to wrap it up.
That's perfect.
So thank you for doing this. Thank you for being a good friend of USA Cares, and we appreciate you. I hope we can stay in touch and maybe have you on again sometime. But thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Alexis, as we wrap up another episode of our podcast, we are slowly approaching that 1 year mark on this podcast, which is really crazy to think, but it's come a long way. I hope, as we talk today about if we can help one person from this episode, and I think that every time. And so I hope somebody out there is listening. And if you're having trouble, if you're struggling, reach out, grab some help. There are so many, not just USA Cares, but there's so many other great organizations that are willing to help. Who's that friend in your life who you can call and just say, you know what? Just like Patrick said, I'm having a bad day. I need to talk to somebody. Don't sit around. We're losing 26 veterans a day right now to suicide, and it's enough. That needs to stop. And we need to be okay with reaching out and getting some help. So if that's you, let this episode be an inspiration for you to reach out and talk to somebody. Call a family member, call a friend, but talk about it, get it out. So learn more about USA Cares at usacares.org. Alexis, where can they find us on social media?
We are on all of the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And be sure to subscribe to
Absolutely.
all of our podcasts on Apple and Spotify.
The videos of the podcast are on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, so check it out. Thank you to all of our great supporters. Just to name a few: McClellan Integrated Services, Renewal by Anderson, so many others.
And our wonderful Wayne Media and Speakeasy. They're the wonderful hosts here and allow us to continue to amplify our message.
So hit that subscribe button today. Make this podcast part of your weekly routine. We are so honored to spend this time with you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.